WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. I wish we had a positive result in the election that Don Mohler and I have been talking about here at WNST and Baltimore Positive for, I don't know, since you were the county executive, right, Don? You left county executiveship a year and a half ago. We began Baltimore Positive about 14, 15 months ago. Every single thing we've talked about has been this election and the significance of this election. That this was before Catherine Pugh was going to prison. This is before coronavirus. This is certainly before the George Floyd and the unrest and all of that. But we sit here, and it's Thursday, in our time, and you may be listening on Friday or Saturday or Sunday. I'm not expecting a result. And I know Sheila wants to say she won, and I know Brandon wants to still say he's in, and I know Mary doesn't want to concede. And, apparently TJ Smith's off eating crabs. I want to sit and have crabs and beer with him this weekend. But this has been, by your professional estimation, and I go back to one of our first episodes, and you said people in government have to have a hatred of incompetence. They really do. And we look at this and the level of confidence that you feel about voting for or against Kwesi Mfume, or I feel about voting for or against Sheila Dixon. I mean, so many of these close races. And the thing with Zeke Cohen over and one, I don't even know what to make of that. I really don't.
Well, this is one of those times. I guess when people listen to Baltimore Positive, one of the things they like is that you're the outrage candidate. I'm the one that sort of says, it'll be okay. It will work out.
Well, you're the one outraged here. I'm the one saying, let due process.
That was going to be my point. That because you're so right, Nestor. When you say back at the beginning, I said every elected official needs to have a hatred of incompetence. That seems to me where the bar needs to be. In anything you do, if you believe you have a responsibility to the citizens that you represent. And there is no way to describe what is happening as you and I sit here this morning to the counting of the votes in the mayor's election in Baltimore City. There's no way to describe that.
Well, the election should be sacred in this country, right? I mean,
right.
Russia, Zuckerberg, troll farms, this orange con man maniac dropping tear gas on our citizens and bringing in prison militia from Texas to guard the city who don't identify themselves. Aside from all of that, and that should outrage everyone, the coronavirus and the go in the woods and die, and we have people marching in streets, and Manhattan has been ransacked, and there's lawlessness and police brutality every morning. I got Ed Reed yelling at Drew Brees this morning on my Instagram at 5 a.m. as I'm brushing my teeth. That's how much consternation is. Now we have an election where I live in the city, and Sheila and Brandon and Mary, they're all going to be outraged, as they should be, because they put their lives into this. And as you know, I'm on the cusp as well in where I am in my outrage on all of this to get involved. But you'd like to think you're going to wake up in America the morning after an election and have some confidence that the thing's on the up and up, Don.
Well, it's wrong on so many levels, Nestor, on so many levels. And where to start? A little bit of a history lesson. We had an issue, I want to say, in the I forget exactly which election it was in Baltimore County, but our votes on the website that were coming out of the Board of Election of Baltimore County did not end up being reported until 1, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. And Kevin Ken, I remember specifically, he just didn't rightfully understand it. And people have to understand boards of elections are independent. But
independent means what? What does that mean? I always come to you for the parental advice. Who is in charge of if Larry Hogan's not in charge of it and Jack Young's not in charge, who's in charge of it?
They are the heads of the boards of elections that state are run by the independent boards. Now, those boards are appointed by elected officials, but it's not unlike. Think of it in the same way that you would a board of education. For example, a county executive can't say to a school superintendent, do A, B, C, or D. They can't. They're run by the board of education. Board of elections is very similar. County executives, mayors can't dictate what happens.
What are you not in control of when you're the CE of Baltimore County? I mean, just along those lines. I mean, I think of parks, recreation, transportation, police, libraries.
You're in charge of your department heads and those government agencies that report to the executive branch. You obviously work, hopefully cooperatively, with the legislative branch, which is the county council. But again, clearly, county council, as it should be, is independent. But in this case, let me give you an example of what can happen. You do control budgets, and budgets are a powerful thing if used effectively. So when these late reporting of results and longer lines than there should be started to appear in Baltimore County and machines breaking down, former county executive cabinets got involved, and he called in his director of information technology. And for a long period of time, that's been one of the premier agencies in Baltimore County government. It's been run by outstanding people. It's comprised of outstanding people, tops in their field. They know what they're doing. And the county executive said, and we met with, in a collegial way, we worked closely, we met with the head of the Board of Elections in Baltimore County, said, look, we can't have this, and clearly you don't have the resources that you need to make this work effectively. So we're going to work with you, but you have to take the guidance and the expertise of our information technology experts, and they're going to come in and they're going to analyze the situation. They will see if there's problems with the machines. They will work with the vendor, and on election night, we will have IT personnel at every single drop-off station overseeing what happens.
Well, what's amazing to me is watching the militia, down in D.C. and how many guns and machine guns and AKs and tanks and all that, and we can't get an election right, and we can't get PPE for you know what I mean? Like, what price is too high to get an election right? You know what I mean?
Nestor, every citizen should be outraged. I mean, one of our recent guests you and I follow on Facebook, Mark Steiner of Emerging Media. Mark went on, obviously, called it an outrage. I think it goes beyond party. It's not a Democratic issue. It's not a Republican issue. It's not an independent issue. We expect our elections to be sacrosanct. We expect that we should be able to count votes in an expeditious way to get it done, to get the people a result. Listen, I've joked for years that if you want something really done well and organized well, give it to a teacher or give it to a lady who's been a Brownie or a Girl Scout leader. They know how to organize the cookie sale. They know how to organize the camping trips. They know who's going to sleep in what tent. They don't mess up the details. And this is simply about tending to the details. So that when you said to me yesterday, you are as angry as I've seen you, that you're right, because I know this isn't difficult. It's about tending to the details.
It's about doing your job. It's Bill Belichick, right?
Everybody doing their job. It's perfect. It's Belichick 101. Give you an example. The whole issue of the ballots being wrong in the 1st Councilmanic District. My wife, Linda, career French teacher, looks at me and literally says, and she's not being flipped, she says, how does that happen? Doesn't someone proofread, again, going back being a teacher, getting it right, doesn't someone double and triple check the ballot before it's sent to the vendor? And quite honestly, Nestor, I don't have any time or any patience for the finger pointing that's going to take place now between the vendor and the Board of Elections. Because all that matters is that the people in the first councilmanic district and candidates who put their blood, sweat, and tears for months into running for office now
to improve our community, to improve our city, to improve our state, to improve our schools, to improve our libraries, to improve policing, all of these things that we're out in the street marching for, and we can't get an election right? Really?
So now, we're going to have to obviously redo an entire councilmanic district. I don't see any way around that. Now, again, I don't know who's responsible, but I know someone's responsible, and we can't go forward with business as usual. Listen.
Well, you don't blame Billy Cundiff for missing the kick. The whole team loses, right? Everybody gets to lose. Everybody there is to fault for not proofing an election ballot.
Exactly right, and not doing. What? Again, I'll go back, and I know they do this in other subdivisions, and this is where city people, the folks who live in the city, the city voters, have a right to be so angry, is that, Nestor, time and time again, the major issues with counting votes come out of Baltimore City. That shouldn't be. It's not more complicated. Montgomery County has more people. Prince George's County has more people. Baltimore County has several 100,000 more people. It just appears, it feeds into that narrative that you and I are fighting against every day. It feeds into that narrative that makes you think, you know what, I may have to run for office. I may have to get in there and try to do something, because it feeds into a narrative.
I've been trapped in my house for 90 days with a mask on with a wife who beat cancer, who lived, and I can't even take her to the beach this weekend. I mean, I'm living, this is a twilight zone, bro. People are rolling by my house every day with signs because their communities have been just torn apart by policing and trust and literally a knee on the neck. That is the story of our city. And, I know you're waiting on baseball and I'm waiting on football and we're all trying to figure this out. We don't have schools for our kids to go back to in September, right? We have a president that has just said there is no more virus, holding up a Bible in front of a church. Upside down after tear gassing peaceful protesters and literally marauding the media, including Australian media on live international television, and then setting up Texas prison guards on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. I mean, what is going on here?
Right.
How can this be acceptable to people? And I know we're marching down to D.C. on Saturday. People ask me, why am I not marching? I got a wife that's almost died twice. Right. I'm not bringing coronavirus home, Right.
No. I get it. And the favorite moment, I mean, again, and hopefully polls are indicating that this may be one of those moments, Nestor, and we've said it before, but this may be one of those moments in American history where the public truly does begin to embrace a different direction. And I think, again,
that this is not the way to go. This is not good for your children, your grandchildren, for Don's grandchildren, for black grandchildren, white grandchildren, Asian Catholic. Pick a faith. This is not good for America.
This is not good for America. And there have been moments before. You go back to the 60s when Bull Connor and others in Alabama turned fire hoses on protesters. When Walter Cronkite and Huntley Brinkley put that on the evening news, that was a seminal moment in the civil rights movement when Americans having dinner said, whoa,
that's not right.
Be who we are. Then you fast forward a few years, and every night Americans would sit and have dinner, and they would see thousands and thousands of young men and women in body bags coming back from Vietnam through Andrews Air Force Base. And they said, whoa, that's not right. I have a sense that a president the other night having the military turn rubber bullets and tear gas on peaceful protesters.
On American citizens.
On American citizens. So he could walk to a church, hold a Bible upside down, and when a member of the press said...
Pulling it out of a $1,500 purse from his daughter, who is somehow being paid by the American people to do something.
And then you say, sir, is that your Bible?
By the way, the thing that struck me, Don, this struck me because I'm not tuned out, you know what I mean? I'm tuned in, but I can't sit and stomach it all day. Like, you sent me a text and said, he's about to speak, and I'm like, he's about to lie. He's about to divide us. He's about to literally drop gasoline on the fire in some way. Don, I watched that cartel, walk out through the firebombs. Every single person in a 50-person coterie of militia. We had Baghdad Bob walking with us, right? I mean, looked like Fidel Castro walking through, a park out of the White House in military fatigues, right? Then you have the other military guy that says, I got snookered into it, and the day later says, I didn't get snookered into it. But more than that, every single one of them was white. Every single one of them that walked through there is white and old and white.
The images are awful, Nestor. The images are awful. And will that appeal to the base? Perhaps. But also perhaps that base is shrinking. I mean, when the media says to the president the other night, is that your Bible, sir? And he says, well, it's a Bible. Well, folks, it's because we know the president doesn't own a Bible.
I love the favorite passage video that has been moving around
they're
again.
They're all good. Old Testament, New Testament. I like them both.
Both.
He's never been to church. He's never read it. Now, that comes from a guy. I happen to be Christian. I don't talk about my faith often, but it's important to me. But I also think that you could be president of the United States if you're a Muslim. I think you could be president of the United States if you're an atheist. I think that's what we're found upon. But if you want to pretend to be a member of the evangelical community, perhaps you ought to actually own a Bible and at least be able to talk about the Sermon on the Mount or know who Abraham was. This man can do neither. And that brings me back, Nestor, to why I'm so outraged and frustrated over this vote counting issue. Because the president is already trying to sow divide about the November election. He's already trying to make people believe that the election will be rigged and the results will not be accurate. When you can't count votes in something as simple as a mayoral election, you feed that narrative, and it shouldn't happen. Now, you and I were talking before we went on the air. We both jumped on the website, and I know you're going to post it, and I'm going to post it.
Yeah, it's voter services. Yeah, voterservices.elections.maryland.gov. And when you get that up, it says voter lookup. You can search your name, last name, date of birth, zip code, and you hit the search button. I put mine in and you put yours in. We have different pathways, right? So we had some folks on from Annapolis about 2 weeks ago, correct? Nikki came on, told us about these ballots. They were arriving. You had yours. I didn't have mine. I showed a picture of me mailing mine on Tuesday. I mailed mine on Friday, right? So I mailed mine on Friday last month. You mailed yours very early, right?
I mailed mine. I'm really concerned, Nestor, because I mailed mine at least 2 weeks ago. I mean, whenever it came, I mailed it. I mean, I knew who I was voting for, for president, and I knew I was going to vote for my good friend Kwesi and Fumi, so I knew who I was.
Well, you saw me fill out the Bill Henry, that day, yeah.
Voted, right, you were going to vote for Bill Henry, so I voted. Linda and I walked to the mailbox, put it in the mailbox. Now, that's over 2 weeks ago, and when I go to that website, my April 28th for the special general election says status accepted. Now,
so does mine, by the way, accepted, and I voted in the 7th as well, on 28th, yep.
So I think that means scanned. Mine for this one says ballot received, which would indicate to me that it hasn't been scanned, and I voted 2 weeks ago.
Yours says ballot received. Mine says ballot sent. That means it was sent to me. Not that means they have not opened my ballot. that they have not received my ballot, and certainly the word accepted, is the red light to me, or or the green light that says, hey, my vote counted. I think accepted, is what I'm looking for, and until we get accepted, I'm going to wonder whether my vote counted.
So here's what we were told, and listen, I have a lot of respect for Nikki Charlton. She did a terrific job on Baltimore Positive. Again, if you're listening, go back, pull up Nikki's interview. She seemed to really understand the process. But here's my question, is I don't know yet if my vote has been counted. And if my vote hasn't been counted that was sent 2 weeks ago, I want to know how in the world that's possible. Nestor, I just went on again right before you and I sat down right around 9 o'clock today. It's Thursday, 2 days after the election, to look at the mayoral results. It looks to me on their website, the way I'm reading it, the way I'm looking at, I went to the Baltimore Sun link, that they still have only got about half of the precincts reporting.
Well, I'm looking down now. It has 6 statuses here. It says application. So these are the possible answers. Application received means I applied to vote, right? Ballot sent means they sent it out to you, which is what mine says right now. It says to me that they sent me a ballot, okay? Returned undeliverable is a potential status, right? So a friend of mine had her mother die, who was my second grade reading teacher, one of the loves of my life, and actually received a ballot for a dead person. That's possible, right? Ballot received is what yours says, right? The next level is accepted, and there's also something that says rejected, which probably would be if you voted on Tuesday, if you and Linda went down to the precinct and voted, and then they tried to count they would say we rejected the online ballot, right?
Nestor, what's the explanation for ballot received?
There is no explanation. It just gives statuses. It doesn't really say what it is. I mean, it sort of speaks for itself. I think Nikki said to us that when they are received, the autograph on the envelope corresponds to your digital, to the marking on it, and it gets separated. So ballot received means they have your envelope, but they haven't counted the ballot within it yet.
So you and I agree that my ballot, which was mailed, and my wife's
13 days ago,
mailed right? 13, 14 days ago, still has not been counted. Now here's
that's incompetence.
It's really, really dangerous. And from the governor on down, and I truly mean this in a bipartisan way, from the governor on down to county executives, Democratic, Republican.
Everybody's got to be pissed.
To our friend, the Speaker of the House, Adrian Jones, President of the Senate, Bill Ferguson, all the senators and delegates. We need answers right now, and we need them not only for this election, because the candidates deserve it, the citizens deserve it, but we need answers because we are facing in November the most important election, and this is not hyperbole, the most important election in our lifetime. We are going to determine the arc of history with the result that takes place on November the 3rd. We have to get it right, and we can't wait 2 to 3 weeks to find out who's going to be the President of the United States. There's no excuse for this. It does not have to be this way. I feel as if we're in the middle of the Iowa caucuses, and that is unacceptable. You should do practice tests. You should know how to get people ballots. It's just not that difficult. It's not that difficult. I won't have anybody tell me it's that difficult. If they say they don't have enough people, then we can test that. We went through that again. Nestor, I'll point that out in Baltimore County. If it became we needed to buy more machines, we went in. They said, well, one of the problems is we don't have enough machines. So we sent, again, a team of experts in. They actually went in and timed how long it took to put ballots through. They then looked at it. It's a simple math problem, Nestor. Actually, it continued after the tragic death of county executive cabinets. It then continued into my administration, and I would get regular updates from IT and the Board of Elections. We would have meetings. I would get updates.
Can't get this wrong. Can't get this wrong. It's like getting water wrong. It's like
Nestor, it's a math problem. We've got a lot of smart people out there in our audience, a lot of mathematicians. You can look at. I'll just give you an example. Take the last 3 or 4 elections in a precinct. Let's just pick your precinct. You vote in X precinct. Or I'll pick mine. It's easy. I vote up here at Hillcrest Elementary. So
I hear they got a good principal there.
But they got a good principal there. So I can look and have our experts do an analysis of how many people voted in each one of those elections. Then come up with an average. Okay, so they tend to have that many people. We can also look at how many people voted by hour. So you can say, wow, okay, so at between 4 and 7 at night is when we really have the most people vote. So we need more workers. We need plenty of machines to be able to handle that load. If you know how long you think is reasonable, it's probably reasonable to stand in line, pick a number, Nestor, 30 minutes to vote, and maybe even 40 minutes. It's not acceptable to me to stand in line for 1 hour, an hour and a half, 2 to 3 hours. It's not acceptable. And we may not be able to do it anyway in a pandemic, so we may have to vote by mail. So let's make this a national emergency. The president doesn't want to do that because he wants there to be disorder in the November election. So we're going to have to go around the president, as many people have written this week and others. I mean, lifelong conservative George Will, Tom Friedman's written. I mean, you just go down the list. Robert Reich has written. He wrote, the president simply has stopped being the president. So we don't have a president of the United States. So we've got to figure out how to work around it. But we better be able to count votes, or we look like a third-rate republic. We are now the laughingstock of the world, and this, my friend, is unacceptable.
Don, I'm going to let you take a little oxygen here. We'll come back and we'll be on the other side of this. And obviously, you and I have expended so much oxygen, so much time, so many resources in trying to figure out who the next mayor of Baltimore will be and who the Democratic primary winner is. Just from that perspective of if Kevin Kamenich, your dear friend, is still with us, or Jim Smith, and you're in one of those, whatever they call them, war rooms, I don't even know the modern part of it because we can't even get together and have a party at the fire hall or whatever would happen in any of these precincts like I was used to when I was a kid with the news crew out. And, Don, I always tell a story. When I worked at the paper, when I worked at the Sun, every election from 86 to 92, all of those election nights were the biggest nights at the paper, man. Like, if you worked at the paper, it was all hands on deck. Everybody was in. They catered. Election night was the Super Bowl for the newspaper in the 80s and 90s when I worked there. And, I would just say all of that tension, all of that everything. Give me a little look right now for you with Sheila, Brandon, Mary specifically and Mary's behind, and Brandon was behind, but his manager put up that they're confident they won. I said, based on what? There are no predictions in this, right? I mean, you're a former county executive. You don't even know if your vote counted. I mean, there's nobody you can call to find, am I ahead? Am I behind?
Yeah,
Todd Schuler tells me a story. He went out and watched ballots get counted because he was in one of those races where, it was 30, 40 votes one way or another that either he was going to win or lose.
Yeah, typically, here's what you can't do. I'll tell you a quick story, Nestor, and then we'll, as you said, we'll get back to it later. Typically, campaigns in a traditional setting pre-pandemic, you would have a poll watcher assigned to each precinct in the county. You would try, and if you're a well-oiled campaign machine, you would like to think that you have, and working with some of your allies in the council and others, that you would be able to have someone in each precinct who, when they run the tally in that precinct, they typically hang, it looks like old adding paper. And that's if you think of an old adding machine. They hang, they post it on the wall, and those are the results. So, for example, precinct A in a traditional election, they reported. They're 100% reported.
Right.
It would say Dixon got 3,000 votes. In this precinct, Brandon got 2,700, Mary got 1,800. And your person at that precinct would write it down and call it in. And
that's an election official, correct?
And one of the no, it's a campaign official.
That's a campaign on the campaign side,
right?
But
we would be getting numbers. We would be running a spreadsheet ourselves and have totals long before they're actually posted. Because once those votes are tallied at that precinct location, they then have to be uploaded or delivered to a central location, who then loads them.
So you would have spokes in the aorta reporting back, correct? So you would. I get you.
So for example, in the O'Malley Ehrlich one, the first O'Malley Ehrlich the first time.
02.
I remember.
No, 06. Sorry.
I remember, and again, 06, because
06.
My brother was assigned, again, I'll go back to Hillcrest. He was working for Jim Smith, and I was in the Jim Smith war room at the time. As our workers called in, we had our spreadsheets going. So Mike Mohler called in very early on from Hillcrest Elementary. And I don't remember the numbers, but I remember. And Catonsville is a pretty good barometer because it's a mix of Democrats and what they call suburban Republicans. It's really sort of a blend of what Baltimore County is. And Mike Mohler called in, and Martin O'Malley had beaten Bob Ehrlich in Hillcrest. Now, again, remember, Bob Ehrlich's a Southwest Baltimore County guy. He's from Arbutus. People liked Bob Ehrlich over here. He was popular. And
you liked Bob Ehrlich, as I remember. I used to like Bob Ehrlich, too.
No, I did like Bob Ehrlich. Always had a nice relationship with Bob. I don't like Bob's politics, but I like Bob.
I renounced my vote for Bob, and I told him why 6 months ago when the kids in the cages look like me. So Bob knows I'm pissed at Bob.
Yeah, I like Bob, but I don't like his politics. But so Mike Mohler says he reads the numbers off, and again, I'll make the numbers up. I can't remember them, but he says Martin O'Malley 3,000, Bob Ehrlich 2,600, and I can remember in that war room saying, "Hey guys, Martin O'Malley's going to be the governor," and they're going, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, if Martin O'Malley can beat Bob Ehrlich in Bob Ehrlich's own backyard, Martin's going to win, because that's a tough precinct for Martin. Bob's popular over there." And you begin to make those judgments. And so you have a sense early on. So when you go back to what you just said about Brandon, and I haven't talked to Brandon in the last day or two, obviously he's too busy. But in a traditional election, if Brandon Scott were to say, we put out a statement, say, look, we've looked at the votes and where they're coming in.
Yeah, they haven't counted a precinct where we dominated, right? Literally.
Right. Exactly right, Nestor. Here's the thing. I don't know how they do that in this current
You can't. I mean, this is the part for me that was crazy because I kept thinking about when is this result going to happen? And I'm not shocked that on Thursday there's no result, right? But I am shocked that I'm not shocked that there's been incompetence, but I'm extremely disappointed and dismayed by the incompetent part of it. But I thought to myself, you would always say, what's the percentage of precincts? There's only a limited, however many. There's 14 districts in the city, however many precincts. In the old school way of thinking, you say, well, 82% of the precincts are reported, or 58%, whatever that number is. There's no way to count precincts. People were mailing ballots on Tuesday. I mailed a ballot last Friday. They haven't even opened the envelope yet.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. We are in, and I mailed mine too.
How the hell did they know who I voted for?
And it appears that mine hasn't been counted. So this is a mess. We are chatting on June the 4th, 2020.
And we can't get an election right in this city, in this country.
So we're literally 5 months from the day after the next election, the presidential election. Nestor, this is a crisis. It's a true crisis. It's not hyperbole to say that. We better get this fixed, and we need all hands on deck in this state at every level of government to make this happen. We need Senator Van Hollen. We need Senator Cardin. I know they're pulling their hair out trying to deal with this president. We need to go around the president. We need to go directly to the people of the United States. We need to have our elections be credible. We need to have them be trusted, and we can't do this. If this was a trial run, if this was a test, we get an F. And with that, I can let it go.
All right, he's Don Mohler, former Baltimore County executive, and my partner in crime here at Baltimore Positive. I am Nestor. You can find me, nasty, at WNST.net, doing all sorts of post-election, pre-election conversation about race and crime and policing and politics, and at some point we'll have sports again. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570. Keep it calm, staying local right here in Towson, and always Baltimore Positive.